Have you ever stepped into a house so quiet that you could almost hear time passing? Margaret, 72 years old, lived in a house like that. A little home tucked away in northern Minnesota, where winters stretch on endlessly and the cold feels like it seeps into your bones. Since her husband passed, that space no longer felt like home. Just empty walls, the creak of a lonely rocking chair, and long, sleepless nights. During one of her routine checkups, I asked her something, just a simple question, the kind of thing I often ask my patients, but it stopped her cold. I asked, "Do you still touch your own body?" Margaret didn't answer right away. She looked at me, eyes wide, then slowly looked down, not from shame, but because something inside her clenched. In that moment, she realized she hadn't truly felt her own body in years. She hadn't looked in the mirror. She hadn't noticed if her skin was warm or cold. She hadn't felt like a woman. I want you to imagine this. You've been a lover, a wife, a mother, the heartbeat of a home. But over time, those roles fade, and somewhere along the way, you stop touching your own body. You stop holding yourself, not because you don't need it, but because you forget that you still deserve love. Have you ever felt that way? Margaret once believed intimacy with herself was a door forever closed, but that one quiet question was like a key. It opened something deep inside, and I believe, sometimes, all it takes is one gentle moment to stir a memory we buried long ago. Another woman, in her 70s, once whispered to me, "Doctor, I live like a ghost. I still eat. I still go to the store. I talk to my kids, but inside, I feel empty. I don't feel like me anymore." You see, the body after 60 doesn't just change in hormones, bones, or sleep. It changes in how we experience ourselves. I'm not talking about sex. I'm talking about connection. The kind that happens in a soft hug you give yourself, a gentle stroke of the arm when you're tired, a hand resting over your heart and whispering, "I'm here with you." That's where Margaret began again. Not with anything grand or dramatic, just one small act, touching her own body. No rush, no pressure, no goal. Just one quiet evening, soft lamplight, and a simple whisper to herself, "I'm still here. I'm still a woman." After working with hundreds of older women, I've learned this. What we fear most isn't death. It's being forgotten, even by ourselves. I'm not asking you to do anything big today. I'm simply inviting you to ask yourself, when was the last time you touched your body? Not to apply cream, not to check for pain, but just to feel that you're still alive. Modern science tells us that even a small act of self-touch, done with love and awareness, can release oxytocin and endorphins. These hormones calm the nerves, improve sleep, soften your heart, and awaken every cell with a gentle message. You're still here. You don't need anyone else. You don't need permission. You just need you and a little courage to come back home to yourself. And Margaret? She's no longer the shadow in a winter house. She wakes early now to do gentle yoga, makes tea just for herself, and sometimes she smiles at her reflection in the mirror. Not to put on makeup, but because she sees herself again. She knows now. She's still here. And she deserves to be loved. If you're still listening to me, quietly, in your own room, and something inside you stirred just a little, maybe you're like Margaret, too. Maybe you've just been waiting for the right question to reopen the door. Am I still here? Can I still love myself? The answer is yes. And your journey can begin with one small, gentle touch from you to you. If you saw yourself somewhere in this story, I invite you to whisper one simple sentence to yourself, just like Margaret once did. I'm still a woman, and I deserve to live deeply on my own 2 feet. You know, people often think that as we grow older, our need for closeness, for emotional intimacy, fades away. But the truth is, it doesn't disappear. It just goes quiet. It waits for a gentle, patient invitation to be awakened again. For Margaret, that invitation came in the form of a single touch. Not from anyone else, but from herself. No candles, no romantic music. Just her, in a familiar room, a cup of cold tea on the table, and 2 hands. Hands that once held her children, wiped away tears, kept a home warm through the years, now resting softly on her own body, as if saying, "You're still worthy of being felt." I once asked another patient, if just 15 minutes a week could soothe your pain, restore your emotions, and reactivate your body's natural healing, would you try it? She looked at me, eyes welling with tears, and whispered, "No one ever told me I could do that without feeling ashamed." That's what stays with me the most. We've been silent for far too long about the emotional, biological, and spiritual needs of women after 60. But science is no longer silent. Research has shown that self-touch, when done mindfully and gently, can significantly reduce symptoms of depression, improve sleep, increase blood flow to the pelvic region, and boost oxytocin levels. That beautiful hormone that helps us feel safe, bonded, and emotionally connected. And the best part? You don't need anyone else to do it for you. You don't need a big reason. You just need yourself and a quiet moment to say, "I'm still here. I still matter." Margaret didn't do it to feel sexy or excited. She did it to come home to herself. And within just a few weeks, she told me she was sleeping better. No more pills, no more waking up in the middle of the night feeling hollow. Touching herself with compassion wasn't some strange new thing. It became a quiet ritual of being alive, and you can begin at any time. Sometimes that's all it takes, just one small, private act to remind you, you're still here, you're still alive, and you might be surprised that something as simple, as personal, and as quiet as self-touch has been studied and proven as a legitimate way to prevent illness, reduce stress, and even extend your lifespan. I remember the first time I shared this data in a workshop for postmenopausal women. One woman, sitting in the front row, her hands folded in her lap, looked up and asked, "Doctor, are you serious? You're telling me that touching myself once a week could help me live longer?" I looked at her and smiled. Yes, and not just live longer, but live more deeply. Let's take a quick look at the science. Don't worry, I'll keep it simple. When you touch yourself with presence, your brain immediately responds by releasing a cascade of healing hormones. Endorphins, your body's natural painkillers. They help you relax, feel calm, and sleep more deeply, without medication. Oxytocin, often called the love hormone. It soothes loneliness, brings emotional warmth, and is especially powerful for women who live alone after 60. But it doesn't stop at feelings. That touch reaches your cells. It softens the pelvic muscles, brings circulation back to the vaginal tissues, areas that are often neglected after menopause. Keeping that area alive helps reduce dryness, maintain tissue elasticity, support hormone balance, and even protect against osteoporosis and memory decline. Some recent studies even show that gentle, regular self-touch can stimulate light, natural estrogen production, something incredibly valuable in postmenopausal years. I once cared for a patient named Ellie. She was 74. She had been living with pelvic pain for 3 years. For the longest time, she simply assumed it was part of getting older. But after I gently guided her to reconnect with her body, through soft, mindful self-touch once a week, something unexpected happened. Within just 2 months, the pain began to ease. No medications, no complicated treatment plans, just her own 2 hands, and a quiet willingness to love herself again, with patience and care. You see, science doesn't lie. But more importantly, your body always responds with gratitude when you truly listen to it. And no, you don't need to do anything flashy or seductive like the media suggests. At this stage of life, self-touch isn't about desire. It's about healing. It's a gentle whisper to yourself that says, I never abandoned you. I'm learning how to come home. I want you to picture this. When you gently touch your body, not from habit, not from urgency, and not because you're trying to feel anything specific, but simply to listen and reconnect, you're not just touching skin, you're awakening something deeper, a whole system, biological, emotional, spiritual, begins to stir. A woman's body after 60 is like an old garden. It may seem overgrown or forgotten, but all it really needs is a few drops of water, a little sunlight, and one tender hand. Self-touch is that watering, quiet, unseen, but full of life. Physically, you've heard it by now. Gentle self-touch increases blood flow to the pelvic region, reactivates soft tissues, and helps ease dryness. One of the most overlooked discomforts in postmenopausal women. It also supports hormonal balance, which plays a vital role in sleep, memory, and even bone strength. What many don't realize is this. Estrogen isn't just about reproduction. It helps protect your heart, strengthens your bones, and keeps your mind clear and sharp. Recent studies show that gentle, regular self-stimulation can help maintain healthy estrogen function in the brain, as if your body is remembering how to feel fully alive again. But maybe the most important thing isn't found in research papers or hormone charts. It's in how you feel, that quiet, beautiful feeling of no longer being abandoned by yourself. I once heard a woman say, after touching her own body for the first time in over 30 years, I didn't do it to feel pleasure. I did it to know that I still exist. Do you feel that? Because when you touch yourself with presence, with kindness, you don't just wake up your body, you call your soul back. That deep feminine spirit, buried under decades of caregiving, selflessness, and silence, she's still there. And she's waiting for you. You don't need to be young or sexy to be worthy of love. You just need to remember, you are still a woman at any age, a woman who has the right to reconnect with herself, with her feelings, with the rhythm of her own heart. And no one can take that away from you. Not society, not your age, not old beliefs. In the end, self-touch isn't about the body. It's not about lust. It's a quiet ritual of being alive, sacred, gentle, and powerful enough to awaken what you thought had long been forgotten. And if you've never tried it, or if you've forgotten how, maybe today is the day you come back home, not to reclaim youth, but to fully embrace the richness of your womanhood with your own 2 hands. I know, when you hear once a week, you might pause. You might think, I don't know if I have the time or the energy or the desire. And you know what? I completely understand. Not everyone can start right away. And honestly, you don't have to start perfectly. Research shows that even just 2 to 3 times a month, when you're truly present, can create real, measurable changes in your mood, your body, even your hormones. But the biggest difference doesn't come from how often you do it. It comes from how connected you feel when you do. Try imagining it like this. You're not trying to achieve something. You're not chasing pleasure. You're not completing a task. Think of each time you touch your body as a kind of check-in, like visiting an old friend, someone who's been with you through everything, but who you may have forgotten along the way. You don't need an hour, just 10 to 15 minutes on a quiet afternoon or in the early morning while the house is still asleep can be enough to light something back up inside you. I once worked with a woman named Clara. She was 67 and had been widowed for 5 years. She used to believe intimacy had no place in her life anymore. But when I shared this idea of ritual self-touch, she gave it a try. Once a month at first, then twice. Eventually, it became part of her weekly rhythm. One day, she told me, with zero shame in her voice, "It's not that I feel younger. It's that, for the first time in a long time, I don't feel alone inside my own body. That's what I want for you. That each time you touch yourself with gentleness and presence, you're creating sacred space. A space with no judgment, no expectation. Just a quiet coming home. And just like anything sacred in life, abundance doesn't come from quantity. It comes from presence. Once a week is ideal. Once a month still matters. But the most important thing is, are you truly there with yourself in that moment? Because sometimes one moment of real connection can awaken an entire part of you that's been asleep. And your body, even as it ages, will always be ready to welcome you back. You know, many women who begin this journey carry so much pressure, so many expectations. One woman said to me, "I tried, doctor, but I didn't feel anything. I just felt sad." And I asked her gently, "What did you feel in your heart at that moment?" More often than not, the answer is, "I felt lost, guilty, like I was doing something wrong." That right there is one of the most common misunderstandings. Not because these women are doing it wrong, but because they began when their heart wasn't ready yet. You can't force a flower to bloom by pulling its petals open. The body is the same, especially a woman's body that has carried so much. Pregnancy, birth, caregiving, sacrifice, and sometimes the quiet forgetting of herself. That body needs to be invited, gently, lovingly, not rushed, not pressured. Another common mistake? Starting when your body is still holding tension, especially in the pelvic area. After years of being ignored, that part of the body may be tight, sensitive, or simply offline. So don't rush. Offer your body a greeting first, a soft hello, a deep breath, a hand placed gently on your heart, with a whisper that says, "I'm here with you, and I'm not in a hurry." I often tell my patients to create a little space, a quiet corner for this ritual. It doesn't need to be fancy. Just a soft corner of your bed, a warm golden lamp, maybe a gentle instrumental song, or the scent of essential oil you used to love in your younger days. When your emotions are supported by the environment, your body softens, like a door slowly opening. And in that moment, touch is no longer an action. It becomes a silent language. You're whispering to yourself, you are still worthy of being felt, still worthy of being loved. And you don't have to finish anything. No climax is required. No need to prove you're enough. Because sometimes the most healing moment isn't found in release, but in the gentle placing of your hand on your skin and no longer feeling like a stranger. That's the beginning. And from there, little by little, you learn how to listen to yourself again, as if you're falling in love with a soul that's been waiting for you, quietly, for a very long time. I remember one evening when we read Alice's letter out loud in a support group for postmenopausal women. The room was completely still. No one spoke. But the glistening eyes and deep, quiet sighs, they said everything. One woman in her 70s wiped her tears and said from the heart, "I thought I was the only one living like this. Turns out, I'm not." Alice's story wasn't just hers. It became a shared voice, a mirror for so many older women. Women who believed that those years were behind them. That intimacy, emotion, femininity were just memories now. But when Alice whispered, "I don't need a man. I just need to feel like I'm still a woman," she touched something far deeper than sex or desire. She reclaimed the need to be present in her own body. You know, many women after 60 live as if they're just roles. The worrying mother, the grandmother who babysits, the woman who goes to her checkups, takes her medication, and follows all the right steps. But inside, a part of them is quietly fading, not because of age, but because they no longer feel seen, felt, or truly themselves. Alice changed that. Not with expensive therapy, not with anyone else's help, but with the courage to gently touch her own body again. Not to do anything, but to hear her body whisper, "I'm still here." And something magical happened. Just a month later, she sent me an email. "I don't feel invisible anymore. I'm eating better, sleeping deeper. But the thing I love most is I've started smiling at myself again." I've lost count of how many women have written to me, left messages after hearing her story. They don't ask, "Am I doing it right?" They simply say, "I've started, and I feel like I'm coming back to life." Maybe deep down, every woman carries an Alice inside her, waiting to be awakened. And if you're still waiting for someone to give you permission, let me be that voice today. You don't need anyone's permission to love yourself again. You only need to begin, gently and with deep listening, just as Alice did on a quiet spring night. You know, when I talk about the long-term benefits of self-touch, some women smile softly, half in doubt, half in hope. They ask me, "Can something so small really change my sleep, digestion, and emotions?" And I always answer with one simple truth. When you start loving yourself again, everything else begins to heal. Let's talk about sleep. After menopause, more than 60% of women struggle with it. Restlessness, vivid dreams, waking up in the night without knowing why. But when you practice self-touch with presence, no agenda, no pressure, your body releases endorphins, the body's natural painkillers, and oxytocin, the hormone of connection and calm. Together, these soothe your nervous system, as if someone is hugging you from the inside. And sleep stops being a nightly battle. It returns to you like an old friend, soft and sweet. But it doesn't stop there. That relaxation travels to your digestion, something younger folks may not understand, but you and I certainly do. Have you noticed? On the days when you're anxious or overwhelmed, your stomach tightens, digestion slows, even though you've eaten the same meals? Because the digestive system doesn't just respond to food, it responds to feelings. And when you learn to soothe your emotions with loving touch, your colon, your stomach, your gut nervous system, they all soften too. Many of my patients, after just a few weeks, tell me, I'm not as bloated or constipated as I used to be. Now let's talk about the pelvic area. We don't usually notice it until it starts hurting. After menopause, blood flow to this area drops significantly. Muscles weaken, tissues dry out, and sensation almost disappears. But just a little movement, a gentle spark of attention, and the blood returns. The body remembers how to feel again. You don't need climax. You don't need force. You just need presence. But maybe the most important shift? It's in your spirit. When you start looking in the mirror and see yourself, not as someone who's getting old, but as someone who's still alive, still feeling, you stop abandoning yourself. I've seen it in my patients' eyes. That moment when they're no longer lost, no longer carrying an unnamed sadness, because they've come home, not to the world, but to their own heart. And when that happens, age is no longer a limitation. It becomes a season of ripeness, a time to learn how to love again, from the inside out. Margaret never told anyone about her journey. No blog posts, no before and after photos, no updates on social media. She just quietly changed, one breath at a time. In the mornings, she rolled out her yoga mat in the sunlight spilling through the window. Nothing fancy, just a few slow movements. But it was in that slowness she reconnected with her breath, with her bones, with a body long dismissed as past its prime. At night, she didn't need sleeping pills anymore. Sleep came soft as breath, maybe because her mind had stopped fighting and finally welcomed itself home. But maybe the most beautiful moment was when she paused in front of the mirror, not to fix her hair, not to check for wrinkles, just to look. And then she smiled. A smile without reason. Or maybe a reason only she would understand. I'm still here. Not as the shadow of a widow. Not as someone just surviving her 70s. But as a woman. Whole, vibrant, present. I remember what she told me at her third checkup. I don't feel like I have to try to live anymore. I am living. It sounded light, like a breeze, but it held the power of a full homecoming. And here's the truth. No one else can do this for you. Not your doctor, not your children, not even your partner. Only you, with two hands and a heart willing to listen. Just one gentle touch a week, not for anyone else, not to prove anything, just to remind yourself, I am still me, and I still deserve love, right here, in this body, at this age. If you're listening to Margaret's story, and somewhere in your heart you feel a quiet tug, maybe it's time to begin. No need to rush. No long-term plan required. Just a quiet moment, and a small whisper from your heart. I want to feel alive again, too. Because you deserve it. And it is never too late. Dear one, if you've stayed with me this far, then maybe something in your heart has just been stirred awake. A soft voice, brave and gentle, is whispering, I want to come home to myself. And I want you to know, you don't need permission. You don't need to tell anyone, and no one has the right to judge you. Self-touch isn't some magical cure. It won't erase the years you've carried. It won't make you young again. It doesn't promise miracles. But sometimes, healing doesn't need to be dramatic. Sometimes all we need is a quiet little path, something personal, something soft, to find our way back. back to your body, back to the emotions you once tucked away, back to that woman inside you who's still alive, still waiting for you to reach out your arms. And maybe, just maybe, that one gentle touch, just 10 or 15 minutes a week, can become a tiny ritual, a weekly act of kindness, like giving yourself a hug without needing a reason, not to please anyone, not to achieve anything, but simply to remind yourself, I'm still a woman, and I still deserve to live deeply and live long. I don't know where you are as you hear this. Maybe you're lying alone in bed. Maybe you're sitting by a window watching the light fade. Or maybe something in your heart is stirring right now, something you haven't named in a long time. If anything I've said today touched you, if you felt like I was speaking directly to a part of you that's been silent, I'd love for you to leave a comment below. Not a long one, not something fancy, just one honest sentence, something simple to mark your beginning. I'm still a woman, and I deserve to live deeply and live long. Or maybe just, I'm ready to come home to myself. You might be thinking, what difference does one comment really make? But here's the truth. Your words, just one whispered line, might be the only light in someone else's long, quiet night. Someone like you, listening, feeling, and waiting for a sign that it's okay to return to herself. You're not alone. Inside every woman, there's a part that's been waiting for gentleness, for presence, for a love that asks for nothing in return. If this video gave you anything, a breath of hope, a bit of peace, or just the feeling that someone gets it, please like, share, or subscribe, not for clicks, but so we don't lose each other in this loud, crowded digital world. Videos like this aren't made to go viral. They're made to whisper gently into your heart, at the exact moment you're ready to listen, to remind you, you are worthy. You are not too late. And you can start again with yourself. One touch a week, one breath a day, one honest moment. That's all it takes to bring yourself back home. And this time, not to a role you used to play, but back to you, fully, deeply, lovingly. I'll be waiting in the comments. Whisper something, just for you, and for the next woman who needs to hear it too.